Welcome to my channel of Gill Master Stories. Don't forget to subscribe button and press on the bell icon for more inspiration and mind-blowing stories. When a racist slur was hurled at Derek in a crowded cafe, no one expected his calm, yet powerful response to silence the entire room and change everyone there forever. The sun had barely risen over the sleepy streets of Cincinnati as Derek stepped into the Bean Counter Cafe. It was a neighborhood favorite, known for its aromatic espresso and eclectic decor. The hum of casual chatter filled the air as people lingered over pastries and checked their phones. For Derek, it was just another Tuesday, an early meeting to prepare for, but not before grabbing his usual black coffee. The line was modest, maybe 6 or 7 people deep, and Derek found his place toward the back. He pulled out his phone to scroll through emails, mentally organizing the day ahead. The soft chime of the door opening barely registered until he noticed her, a woman, mid-40s with sharp features and an air of impatience. She walked in briskly, eyes scanning the room like she was already annoyed. Her heels clicked loudly on the tile floor as she joined the line behind him. Derek didn't think much of it at first. People were often rushed in the mornings, caffeine-deprived and short on time, but the tension began to build when she huffed audibly and muttered something under her breath. He ignored it, focusing on his phone, until the murmurs turned into words, spoken just loud enough to be overheard. "Unbelievable," she muttered. "Some people have no manners." Derek glanced over his shoulder briefly, unsure if she was referring to him or just venting to herself. Her glare confirmed it was the former. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing, turning back to his emails. He'd been through moments like this before. Microaggressions that simmered below the surface, too subtle to confront outright. Still, something about her tone put him on edge. As the line moved forward, Derek took a step closer to the counter, leaving the customary space behind him. That's when it happened. The woman's voice cut through the ambient noise, sharp and accusatory. "Excuse me, you just cut in front of me," she said, her words loud enough to draw attention from nearby patrons. Derek froze, momentarily stunned. He turned around fully this time, his calm demeanor intact. "I've been in line since I walked in," he said evenly, his voice carrying no hint of aggression. Her face twisted into a scowl. "No, you weren't. I've been standing here. And you just pushed ahead like you own the place." The murmurs in the cafe quieted as people began to notice the confrontation. Derek could feel the eyes on him, some curious, others uncomfortable. The barrister at the counter hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. Derek held his ground, his posture relaxed but firm. "I'm not sure what you're talking about, but I didn't cut in line." The woman crossed her arms, her voice rising. "Of course you'd say that. People like you always think the rules don't apply to them." The air grew heavier as the room fell silent. Every patron now focused on the brewing confrontation. Derek felt the weight of their gazes, knowing the situation was far from over. But what came next was something no one in the cafe expected. Derek took a deep breath, his face calm, but his mind racing. He'd heard this tone before, resentful, accusatory, laced with the kind of entitlement that left no room for dialogue. But he hadn't expected it to escalate so quickly. Not here, not over something as trivial as a coffee line. The woman took a step closer, invading his personal space, her finger jabbing toward his chest. "I know your type," she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. "Always trying to take what isn't yours, cutting lines, breaking rules, typical." The word typical hit harder than the rest, carrying a weight that wasn't lost on Derek or anyone else in the cafe. A couple sitting by the window exchanged nervous glances, their eyes darting between Derek and the woman. The barista's hand hovered near the phone, ready to call for help if needed. Derek held his ground, his voice steady. "I don't know what you mean by my type, but I'm not here to argue with you. I've been standing in line just like everyone else." Her face flushed red, and for a moment it seemed like she might back down. But then, in a voice trembling with anger, she said the word that made the entire room freeze. "You people think you can just do whatever you want. Well, not here. Not today, Nick." the room fell into a stunned silence. The word hanging in the air like a thunderclap, cups clattered against saucers. As patrons turned their heads, their shock palpable. The barista visibly recoiled, her mouth opening and closing, as if searching for the right thing to say. Even the woman herself seemed momentarily startled by her own audacity, though she quickly masked it with a defiant glare. Derek felt his chest tighten, but he didn't flinch. He refused to give her the reaction she was likely hoping for, an explosion of anger that would confirm whatever twisted narrative she'd constructed about him. Instead, he closed his eyes for a brief moment. Centering himself, a man in his early 30s, sitting at a nearby table, finally broke the silence. "Hey lady, what the hell is wrong with you?" he said, his tone a mixture of disbelief and disgust. "Yeah, that's way out of line," added another voice, this time from a woman standing a few feet away. A ripple of murmurs spread through the café, patrons shaking their heads and whispering among themselves. But the woman didn't back down. If anything, their condemnation seemed to embolden her. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking," she snapped, her voice rising. "Someone had to say it." Derek finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "And you thought it should be you?" She blinked, momentarily thrown off by his composure. "What's that supposed to mean?" She shot back, her tone defensive. "Now it means you've shown everyone here exactly who you are," Derek replied. He gestured around the room, his voice carrying just enough volume to reach every corner. "Look at their faces. You didn't say what they're thinking. You said what you're thinking, and now they know it." The weight of Derek's words seemed to hang in the air, a counterbalance to the woman's venom. But this was just the beginning. What Derek said next would turn the tide entirely, leaving everyone, including her, speechless. Derek's voice carried a quiet strength as he continued, addressing not just the woman, but the entire room. "Do you know what that word means to someone like me? What it carries? It's not just a slur. It's a reminder of the pain, the struggle, the history of people who look like me. People who've endured far worse than this moment, and kept moving forward, holding their heads high." The cafe was silent. Even the usual whir of the espresso machine seemed to have paused. Every eye was on Derek as he stepped into the moment. With a calm grace that demanded attention, he turned his focus back to the woman, his tone unyielding but not cruel. "You think you're putting me in my place, but the truth is you're showing everyone here where you've decided to stand, and that's on the wrong side of decency, of humanity." The woman opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her defiance faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. Derek didn't wait for her to recover. He gestured toward the people around them, his voice rising slightly. "These people, they're witnesses to your hate, but also to something more powerful, what I choose to do next. And I'm choosing not to meet your hate with more hate, because that's not who I am. I've seen too much, lived too much, to let someone like you dictate my reaction." A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. The man who had spoken up earlier nodded, his expression one of admiration. The barista stepped out from behind the counter, her face set with determination. "Sir," she said, addressing Derek, "your coffee is on the house. And as for you," she turned to the woman, "you need to leave." The woman's face turned crimson. "I'm not going anywhere," she snapped, though her voice had lost its earlier edge. "I've done nothing wrong." Derek raised a hand, signaling for the barrister to pause. "Let her stay," he said calmly. "Let her hear this." Turning back to the woman, he softened his tone slightly, though it still carried the weight of his convictions. "I don't know what led you to this moment. What pain or fear made you think this was okay? But I hope you take some time to think about what happened here today, because whether you realize it or not, you've left an impression on everyone in this room. And it's not the one you think." The woman's mouth opened, then closed again. Her gaze darted around the room, meeting only judgment and disapproval. Slowly she stepped back, her earlier bravado crumbling. As she turned and walked toward the door, someone near the counter started clapping, then another and another. Soon the entire cafe was applauding, not for her departure, but for Derek's dignity and strength. The sound of applause filled the space. A collective acknowledgement of Derek's quiet victory. But as the door swung shut behind the woman, Derek wasn't finished. He turned to address the room, leaving them with words they would carry long after they left. As the applause subsided, Derek glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of the patrons who had witnessed the exchange. Their expressions were a mixture of admiration, gratitude, and quiet reflection. He took a moment, letting the silence settle before addressing the group. "I'm not here to make a scene," Derek began, his voice steady, "but I think we all need to acknowledge something. Hate doesn't grow in a vacuum. It thrives in silence, in indifference. Moments like this are opportunities, not just for me to stand up for myself, but for all of us to decide what we'll tolerate in our spaces." The barista nodded, her arms crossed over her apron. Her face resolute. "You're right," she said, "and for what it's worth, I'm sorry you had to deal with that here." Derek offered her a small smile. "It's not about this cafe, it's about what we do next. How we respond, not just in this moment, but the next time we see something like this happen." A young woman near the window raised her hand, hesitantly as if she were in a classroom. I just want to say thank you," she stammered, "for handling that the way you did. I don't think I would have been as calm or as brave." Derek's smile widened. Bravery isn't about not feeling angry or hurt. It's about choosing what to do with those feelings. "We all have that choice," the man from earlier chimed in. "And you made the right one. That took strength, man. Real strength." The atmosphere in the cafe shifted. The initial tension replaced by a sense of solidarity. Conversations resumed, but they carried a new tone. One of connection and introspection. People shared their own experiences, their own stories of standing up to injustice, or falling short and wishing they'd done more. The room buzzed with a kind of energy that felt rare, almost transformative. As Derek collected his coffee and prepared to leave, the barista handed him a second cup. "For the road," she said with a wink, "and for being the kind of person we need more of in this world." Derek chuckled softly, accepting the gesture. "Thank you. But remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about showing up when it matters." As Derek walked out the door, coffee in hand, the morning sunlight seemed a little brighter, the world a little lighter, but the lessons of that day lingered. Not just for him, but for everyone who had been there. And there was one final thought Derek had to share, one that would resonate long after the story ended. Outside the cafe, Derek paused for a moment, letting the crisp morning air fill his lungs. The confrontation had been intense, but he felt no regret, only a sense of purpose. He knew moments like these weren't just about standing up for himself, they were about creating ripples, challenging others to think, to act, and to grow. He looked down at the coffee cup in his hand, the warmth radiating through the cardboard sleeve. It reminded him of something his late grandmother used to say: "Kindness isn't weakness, it's power, because it takes strength to choose it." Her words had guided him through so many moments in life, and today they had steered him again. Derek turned and caught his reflection in the cafe's glass window. For a brief second, he thought about the woman, her anger, her ignorance, and the pain she carried. Even if she refused to acknowledge it, he wasn't naive enough to believe that his words had changed her. But maybe, just maybe, they had planted a seed. Inside the cafe, the patrons were still talking, their conversations carrying a new energy. Derek couldn't hear their words, but he didn't need to. He knew the story of what had happened would travel beyond those walls, inspiring some and challenging others. It was a reminder that change didn't require grand gestures. Sometimes it was as simple as speaking truth in the face of hate. Before walking away, Derek took one last look at the cafe and smiled. He didn't need to stay to see the impact of his actions. He had done what he came to do, to stand tall, to speak clearly, and to remind everyone there, and himself, that dignity could never be taken, only surrendered. Stories like these remind us of the strength it takes to respond to hate with grace. They show us the power of standing firm in our values, even when it's hard. If this story resonated with you, take a moment, to reflect on how you can make a difference in your own community. And if you believe in spreading messages of resilience and humanity, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content and share your experiences. Thank you for being part of Gill Master Stories community. See you soon.